Hello. Okay, we have a lot to discuss today. Actually, it's not as much as the last video because I was kind of basically introducing the complete basics. Today, I'm assuming that you have watched the entire video beforehand, along with have downloaded all the tools you need for setup and everything you are going to need to actually begin debugging this application that I have for us today. So you might be thinking, what exactly do we have? Well, today I'm introducing you to authenticated loaders. So if you don't know what authenticated means, it's requesting info from the server, and the server decides whether or not something is valid or not valid, or it gets the information required and sends it back to the client. Now, I'm going to explain this really fast in a MS Paint, but it's important that you know the difference between hard-coded and authenticated. Are the two words that I really like to use. So I'll better explain it here. As you can see, I have this MS Paint setup where we see authenticated. An authenticated loader would look like this. So the client would be right here, as you can see in black. The client sends a request to the server. Then the server decides what to do with that request and sends that back to the client. And the client will, do something based on what the server said, right? And in a hard-coded loader, which is what we were working with before, the client will ask the client somewhere in the client, what's happening, and then the client will send itself back, or return a value, or something like return information back to itself, to where it's like, okay, well, they've been authenticated, not authenticated, but validated, I guess is a good word. So now that you kind of understand the difference, make sure to look this over a little bit so you understand. But for now, we're just going to minimize this, and we're going to open up our example. So we have no packer basic auth.exe. This is a basic example from a very popular authentication company, and according to the fair use laws, what I'm doing here is very valid and goes against no terms or anything, because I'm kind of reworking it and making it into my own way. So it's kind of like reaction channels. I'm saying this so I don't get terminated falsely. But yeah, anybody who is looking to DMCA my video, this is not, you're not allowed to do this according to the Fair Use Act. Okay, moving on. We are going to also, by the way, before going into this, I'm not going to be saying the name just in case it does violate anything. However, you will see it on screen. That does not mean that it's violating any use or anything, because obviously I'm kind of making it into my own, or modifying it a bit so where it's actually usable. Again, open up. Actually, no. We're gonna open up and detect the easy, because that's the first thing you should always do with any application. Drag the exe onto the detected easy, and we can see from our perspective, we see the mode is 64-bit and it's console, and we see it is programmed in C++. So that means we're using our x64 debugger because it is C++ and it is in 64-bit mode. Now we can also head over to NOS file detector to find out more info. We can see it was compiled with Visual Studio, again C++, and do what you wish with this info. Yeah, that's basically it. We see that it is not packed, which you might not understand yet, but we will understand later. Make sure you have this checked. I already told you that in the last video. And yeah. Now we can go ahead and open up our debugger. Make sure you're running it as an administrator. And the first thing you should do when you open your debugger and you want to debug a file, what are we going to do? Obviously, when it's not packed or anything and no protection, what do we do? Well, we simply, open it, use the little file here, double click, And we see we're in the NTDLL module, so we're just going to run once. And we have gotten to the entry point. We see entry point right here, the entry point of our program. Now, you might be a little bit confused here, but we actually don't see any text at all here, so we actually haven't gotten to any of the actual code. But this is the entry point of our program. I will teach you about the entry point later. It is very, very useful to know what all of this looks like. So kind of keep this image in the back of your mind once we get to start stuff like finding the entry point or finding the .text section. So for example, it'd be here. Stuff like that. But for now, don't worry about this. It's okay. Since we're here, we can go ahead and click run one more time. And we see we got connecting. And then after we connected, it's asking us if we want to log in, if we want to register, if we want to upgrade, or if we want to enter our license only. So usually when I am, cracking an authenticated service, I like to make sure that it's a license only, so that way I don't accidentally enter a valid login, or I don't register, or like upgrade. And upgrade a lot of the times won't actually get you past any steps. It'll just kind of close out and say upgraded, even though, because we're modifying the client, I guess a good way to put it, the server actually doesn't actually upgrade anything. So we don't really want to mess with upgraded. But I usually like to go with license key only because it is just the simplest way to go by this. But that's just my personal preference. You could also do login, register, or license key only. I don't recommend upgrade, especially when dealing with authenticated services. So again, we're going to enter 4 for license key only, and now we have this enter license screen. And obviously we haven't done anything yet, so we don't have to worry about this right now. We just want to see what happens after we enter our license. So it's just random stuff. It pauses and then says status invalid license key. Now you might be wondering, why not isn't it instantly showing up in the console that it was invalid? Well, because it has to make a request to a server, so to a website, and that website is basically telling the application that we're running, is that key that we entered a valid key? And if it says no, it'll send us that message. If the key is banned, it'll send another message. If the key is expired, it'll send another message. If it's correct, it'll send another message. And we want it to make sure that it's always that our client is thinking that it's getting a correct response from the website or server. So hit this little restart button here and run again. And we see we're connecting again, and we're going to click 4. And now the first thing that you do when you're just starting to crack, what do you want to do? Well, you should have searched for all user module string references. Now you will see a bunch of strings here. The website, we can obviously assume that it is connecting to this website here. You will not be able to see this. I will have this blurred out along with a lot of the other strings because I don't want to get DMCA'd, as I said before. And this does not go against any kind of fair use act. So, again, what are we going to do? Well, for cracking this specific authentication, I'm actually going to be showing you exactly a bunch of different methods you can use. So, when someone codes a authentication service, so something like, they're selling an auth is what we would call it. What people say is auth. We're selling an auth. What auth do you use? Well, this is what auth I'm using, right? Well, when they're selling the auth service, they usually have something called a C++ library. A C++ library is basically what you put into here that'll make the auth work. And a lot of the times, the library is named, and that's just how it's set up in a lot of different auth services. So, in this case, we see that you won't be able to see this, but our library name is actually this right here. How do we know that? Because we see it right here. And obviously we don't need this because this isn't the library name, and we don't need these because this is not the library name. And we will breakpoint these because the library name is going to be hit right before the request happens. So let's press our F2 key while highlighting all these, and we actually get this check section integrity failed, don't tamper with the program. What is this? It's basically a little protection measure that key off. It is basically a little protection measure that's coded into that C++ library to make sure that nobody can mess with your program. So you might be thinking, how do we bypass this if we can't set breakpoints? Well, first of all, you're going to want to remove these breakpoints so you don't trigger it again. Hit the restart, and we're going to try again. Head over to your references. It should have saved. And we're going to check, or look for check. And we see check section integrity failed. Don't tamper with the program. That is the exact message that we got. We're going to double click this, and scroll up just a little bit, and we see obviously the beginning of the function here. How do I know? Because the int3s here, you don't have to know what any of this means yet, but it's basically, this is kind of like a space. It's like spacing. This is a whole nother section in the program that we don't need all of this. And look, if we scroll up a little bit more, again, just keep scrolling up a little bit more, we see again the int3s and then the beginning of the program right here. I mean the function. So let's go back to our RIP by double clicking our IP here. And we see this, and we can go back to our message by going back to here. And we see our message here looks like it's being displayed. If we, if we take this jump, this message will never be displayed as what we're looking at, right? So a lot of people will make the mistake of changing this to a jump if not equal, which will actually make it so that it will always be equal unless we're tampering the program. We don't want that. So we're actually going to make this a JMP, so it always jumps over, and it's always saying that we have never tampered with the program ever. So that's a very easy way to bypass this, and there's also other ones you can do by simply holding down, dragging to this XOR right here, and binary fill with knobs, and OK. I'm not going to do that because this is just a easier way to do it. It doesn't matter, both will do the job. Now we can see if our thing is going to work. This is our library name. If we press F2, it looks like we haven't gotten the message. We're going to press 4, and we're going to enter our license key. And as you can see on the bottom here, we have int3 breakpoint at no packet basic auth whatever, right? This address. And we see that all of these are red, but this one is green. That means that the RIP is on this breakpoint. This breakpoint has been hit. So full screen your debugger, double click it. And as you can see, we see our library name here. Yeah, so what are we going to do? Well, we see specifically right under the library name most of the time for most authentication services. And this one particular, right under here is where they're making the request to the website or the server, the authentication. We don't want this. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to press NOP. And what have we done? We have just made sure that the request is never going to happen in the first place. So the client actually doesn't have a response yet. And by default, it is going to, obviously, it looks like as if it's going to jump over this thing that says initialized. And if we see here really quickly, we take a glance, this might be a little bit overwhelming, but you see sleep, which is kind of like pause. We see exit. We don't want to exit. But it seems as if we are taking this jump over and we are not exiting. And we're actually, we're actually like jumping over that exit. We are not getting an invalid message. So let's go ahead and press the run. And we see that we have successfully created a file for auto login. That means we have logged in. It shows our username. Obviously didn't fetch it. Our user data, IP address, hardware ID, grade date, and this, because we actually don't have any info that came from the server, so it's not going to display anything. Okay, sorry about that, guys. The recording crashed, unfortunately. However, we're just going to go from where I left off. So what I did was I breakpointed the library name, and then after from the library name, I basically bypassed the authentication process. So I'm going to be showing you a second method on how to bypass this authentication specifically for this service only. So search for strings. Well, you should already have it in references, and we're going to make sure that our section integrity is patched. So obviously change this, and let's go back to our this string is actually what we're going to be looking at. Make sure you set a breakpoint on it after you've patched your integrity. And what we have here is actually something that is changing based on our response from our authentication. It is changing what's going to happen at that jump that we saw before. So you saw the sleep and the exit. It's basically going to change whether or not it's going to jump over that. So what are we going to do? Well, we don't want any of this, so we are going to binary fill with NOPs and hit OK. I usually always go to make sure you at least leave these two lines because these are needed to actually return the RIP. How do I know this? Well, it comes with time. You'll understand when I talk about it a little bit more. So let's actually enter our license key. Just made a little authentication request. Breakpoint this return, run, step over. Don't worry about any of this for now. I'll explain it in detail a bit later. And we're going to back to this return, step over, and as you can see, we're in the same exact function that we were before. We see this, it should stand out to you that this jump right here, all of this, of course, and then the call. So step over, and we see that we are actually jumping over, which is good. Let's see if we run, and obviously we see successfully create a file for auto login, which means we've logged in. So what we're actually going to do is we are going to, give me a second, delete this so we don't auto log in, restart, and I'm going to show you another method, and you might actually guess it. So first thing we do, patch our integrity. You could do this, or you could do this. Then after that, breakpoint our success, type in our license key, and obviously we're going to keep this because I'm going to show you exactly what happens when we do go over this. So it may not look like anything has happened to you, but you know, this might look a little bit kind of similar. Breakpoint this return, step over, and we see this, and it's comparing, and then after it compares, it seems as if we don't jump. Well, you can actually just change this to a jump if you really wanted to. And problem solved. We are authenticated, or not authenticated, but we have bypassed authentication again. So that is basically all they have to talk about. Next time we are going to be looking at a custom authentication. So it's very important that you understand that the program that we're looking at now, all of these methods that I'm showing you won't actually work on everything because every single loader is different. Almost every single loader is different. So it is very important that you understand why I'm knopping the things I'm knopping, why I'm changing the jumps that I'm jumping, and why I'm, getting rid of some of the calls that I'm getting rid of. It's important that you understand. If you don't understand, please watch this video in depth or reach out to me and I will try my best to explain it to you, one-on-one. But of course, I'm very busy now, so it might take a while, but obviously reach out to me. Why not? And in the next video, hopefully you will have a better idea of why I'm doing certain things, because it will be a custom authentication that someone actually coded themselves and didn't get from a big, LLC or company. So yeah.